whatever it may be, living out on Vancouver Island and no doubt spending lots of time in Los Angeles. I think this is a really, really bad situation. And I have to say, Prince Harry was born to great wealth, to great privilege, but also born to duty. I think he's turned his back on it. Some think that's a very hardline view. But whatever I think, let's speak to somebody who really has studied the royal family for decades. And I'm going to introduce you this morning, Phil Dampier. He's royal commentator and author of Royally Suited, Harry and Meghan in Their Own Words. Phil, good morning. Welcome.
Good morning, Nigel.
To LBC. Now, tomorrow,
yes,
there will be the Sandringham Summit. The Queen will be there. Prince Charles will be there. William will be there. Harry will be there. We're told that the Duchess will be on a conference call to them from Canada. Do you think, just given where we are now, there is a prospect of broad agreement and peace breaking out at Sandringham tomorrow?
Well, to be a fly on the wall there tomorrow, or indeed a corgi under the table, Nigel. I mean, it must be absolutely incredible. But I think it's absolutely extraordinary. Will the Queen and Charles and William have a go at Harry, or will they have a go at him? Or will he phone a friend, as you say? Will he phone Meghan? And with the time difference, I think it might be quite difficult for her to get involved. And I'd be surprised if she did actually get involved, in all seriousness. I think this was a question yesterday that the press asked and said, might she phone in? And then he said she might phone him. But I doubt if she will, to be honest. But it is critical. It reminds me of the 1990s when we had the formation of the Way Ahead group. Now, you may remember we had the Annus Horribilis when we had the separation of Charles and Diana and also of Andy and Fergie. And that formed the Way Ahead group, where Prince Philip was very much at the head of the family at the time, and they had these regular meetings and plotted a way forward, and one of those resulted in the opening up of Buckingham Palace and also paying income tax. I think if Philip was 20 years younger...
All of which actually worked in a way.
It did work in the end, so it actually did them some good. It gave them a bit of a kick up the backside, and it actually helped them to modernise. So that, in a funny sort of way, this might help them to modernise. But as you said, I think it's going to be very, very difficult to be half in and half out, what you might call a soft Mexit or a hard Mexit. And that is going to be the problem. Are they going to be able to keep the perks, keep the security, and at the same time go off to the States or go off to Canada and make money? And that's going to be the real problem. Now that the Queen doesn't like loose ends. That's why she wants to fix this at a pace, they've called it. They want to fix it in days rather than weeks. But I'm not sure that's going to be possible. I think there's going to have to be a lot more negotiations behind the scenes.
And you talked about, how they're going to relate to each other. I mean, it was extraordinary, wasn't it? Front page of today's Sunday Times. Prince William on Harry and Meghan. I've put my arm around my brother all of our lives. I can't do it anymore.
No, well, that's what a friend is telling the Sunday Times that he said, and I can understand. And of course, a lot of people think that this whole problem stems back to when William queried Harry when Meghan first came on the scene and said, "You sure you're not rushing into this? You sure this is the right one for you?" And he took offence at that, and that was the beginning of the problems.
Let's just go back a little bit and let's talk about some happier stuff, shall we? Because, you wrote this book a couple of years ago, Royally Suited, Harry and Meghan in Their Own Words. And, we're also told that the Duke of Edinburgh questioned Harry as to whether this was a wise...
There was a suggestion that Philip, in one of his typical moments, said, "You don't actually marry American actresses. You date them, but you don't actually marry them." So yes, there was a suggestion that he was a little bit dubious. But I can honestly say that when she first came on the scene, she was seen as a breath of fresh air. It was an amazing wedding, wasn't it? So
the whole world
20 months ago.
But the whole world loved that wedding. It was a beautiful day in Windsor. It looked amazing. I also thought, you've got a sharper eye on this than I have, but I felt media-wise, think of the abuse that Charles and Camilla took year after year after year. And they just didn't complain, they got on with it, and they've, I think, come out the other end of that tunnel. But I thought that their first... I remember her going to Brixton. I remember her first public engagements. They were getting the best press that any royalties ever had.
Dealing with the Grenville victims, but as you say, the wedding 20 months ago, it's not long, is it? And yet it's all gone south very quickly. I thought she was genuinely welcomed. I thought she was going to be seen as a breath of fresh air, and I don't recognise this allegation of racism. I honestly don't think that the press has been racist. Yes, there's been one or two comments here and there, but I don't think people have been racist. I don't think the general public has been racist. I think people thought it was going to mean that people from ethnic minorities were going to become interested in the royal family. So it was going to be a good thing. So I don't think that's the reason they've been forced out. I don't think they've been forced out by members of the royal family. I think there was a great role for them to play. The Queen wanted them to be Commonwealth ambassadors. They could have gone all over the world on Commonwealth tours to Australia and Canada and New Zealand, Jamaica.
And lived a fantastic life.
Lived a fantastic life. But for some reason, it doesn't suit them. And I think most people think, well, if it doesn't suit them, let them go, but we don't want to pay for it.
Did Meghan realise what she was getting into?
Well, I honestly thought that their marriage would work. I think that when she came on the scene, I thought, well, they're bound to have a couple of kids soon. Of course, they had little Archie. Of course, they didn't want a title for him, so they can hardly complain if they have their titles taken away now, can they? Because they didn't seem to want him to have one, despite the fact he's seventh in line to the throne. So I think she knew what she was getting into. I'm now starting to worry that perhaps all along she has seen this as some kind of opportunity. She does have a little bit of form on this. She was married before only for a couple of years, and then when she landed the role in Suits in Canada, she just dumped her husband, and a lot of friends, her first husband, a lot of friends were very, very shocked by that and thought she was quite hard and quite callous. So you do wonder whether at the back of her mind she's been planning something like this all along.
You saying that, would not the royal family have done some pretty in-depth vetting of who she was?
Well, I think they did do some vetting, and I think this, as I say, this comes back to the core of it, that William did in fact query it and said, is this a wise move? And actually gave a bit of advice from Princess Diana, their mother, and said, when I got married to Prince Charles, we hardly knew each other, and so was it a wise thing? But he was determined. He's obviously deeply in love with her. Some would say besotted with her, but deeply in love with her. And I think he's now genuinely torn between his family, the royal family, and her. And it's a very difficult one for him.
And what he was born to.
What he was born to. You talk about the sense of duty. I'm surprised, to be honest, that because of his experiences in Afghanistan and the terrible things that he saw, and because he started up the Invictus Games when he saw injured servicemen, so you'd think he'd have a greater sense of perspective. He's got the Invictus Games coming up
which,
in
by the
May.
way, has been a roaring success.
A fantastic success. That's probably his greatest achievement so far, and I'm sure he will continue with that. But you wouldn't think he'd be quite so thin-skinned about stuff that's said about him in the press. You'd think he'd have a little bit more armour plating around him. So I'm quite surprised that he's that sensitive. But clearly, he's had some demons that he's been dealing with for many, many years, and he admitted as much in 2017, around about the 20th anniversary of Diana's death. And I think initially Meghan brought some of that out of him deep down. She encouraged him to sort of think about, confront some of these demons. That wasn't necessarily a bad thing, but it's probably gone a little bit too far.
Well, I wonder what happens tomorrow, and I wonder how much worse can this possibly get. And I was really very struck this morning by what Tom Bradby said. Tom Bradby, who of course knows them pretty well, did that interview with them in Africa last autumn where they, for the first time, started to express some unhappiness, began in the eyes of some to start to paint themselves ever so slightly as victims, perhaps. But thinking about whether this, if there is not a very strong agreement tomorrow, and even if there is an agreement, there's technicalities about, how do you be Colonel-in-Chief of a regiment, represent X number of charities if you're not here for 6 months a year? But Tom Bradby, towards the end of his article in today's Sunday Times, says, I have some idea what might be aired in a full, no-holds-barred, sit-down interview, and I don't think it would be pretty. Phil, I think the biggest risk of a lot here is that Meghan Markle, whether it's this week or next week or a couple of months, it doesn't really matter actually when it is, that she sits down with Oprah Winfrey, or the two of them sit down with Oprah Winfrey and say, we were never really welcome, the House of Windsor is a very sexist, out of date, is it that, because I come from a mixed race background? I mean, that to me,
it all brings back memories of Diana's Panorama interview, doesn't it? And Jonathan Dimbleby's interview with Prince Charles in the 90s. And, yes, it's potential dynamite, isn't it? And there's a kind of veiled threat there, isn't there? If we don't get what we want, if Meghan doesn't get what she wants, as Harry has said, we're going to give this interview, we're going to accuse the royals of being racist, not welcoming me, blow the lid off it. It's very unpleasant. It's very, very sad, actually, because I really genuinely think there was a lot of goodwill towards her. And if they only got out and about in the country and met people, carried on with normal royal duties, I think, they could be incredibly popular. But if he burns his bridges and, let's say he goes off and he does live in Canada or America and God forbid in a couple of years' time, they actually get divorced or they separate, is he going to come scuttling back? Is he going to be able to come back and pick up where he was before? It's going to be very, very difficult, isn't it?
I mean, you talk about the annus horribilis, and yet it seems to me this is actually far more serious than that. I mean, this is not quite 1936, but it's a pretty...
It's up there. It's up there with the sort of 33 years that I've been doing the Royals. It's up there with in the sort of top 5 along. I think obviously Diana's death was the biggest crisis the Royals faced. But the Queen is a pragmatist. I mean, she's a realist and she adapts when she has to. Remember when Diana's death, she eventually allowed the flag to be flown at half-mast.
Yes, I remember all
She
that.
came back down to London. She didn't want Charles to marry Camilla Parker Bowles. She referred to her as that wicked woman. But in the end, she gave in and realised that for the future of the monarchy, they should get married, and it's worked out really well. So she would do whatever necessary, but at nearly 94, I think she might be trying to get this sorted out very quickly. And it's come on top of the Prince Andrew, Jeffrey Epstein scandal, and of course Prince Philip not being in the greatest of health at 98. So it's a hell of a lot on her shoulders, and she must be... I don't know what she's done to deserve it. I think people feel very, very sorry for her. All the polls show that they're
Aren't we united in that?
I think so. All the polls show that people think that, whatever Harry and Meghan's gripes and whether they've got any genuine problems and any genuine claims, that I think, most people think that they could have done this in a much better way.
I couldn't agree more. I'm discussing the royal crisis. I'm asking, can it get any worse than it currently is? I fear that it really could. I'm joined this morning by Phil Dampier, royal commentator, author of Royally Suited, Harry and Meghan, in their own words. I now want to take your calls, 0345 6060 973. You're listening to the Sunday edition of the Nigel Farage Show here on LBC, and it's 10:15.
This is LBC.
At Ring, we've reinvented the doorbell. So no matter where you are or what time of day, you can watch over your home and the things you care about. Ring Video Doorbell streams HD video and two-way talk straight to your phone, so you can speak to whoever's at your door from anywhere.
Delivery.
Oh, great. Could you leave it with my neighbour, please?
Sure, no problem.
And it's so simple, you can install it yourself in minutes. See, hear and speak to whoever's at your door from wherever you are with Ring Video Doorbell. Available at ring.com and selected retailers.
Word in the woods is that 3 little pigs are looking to sell their homes quick. They seem to be in a spot of bother with a big bad wolf called Rick.
Come out, little piggies!
So they spoke to the friendly team at Property Rescue, who can offer a guaranteed sale in as little as 48 hours at a fair price and a cash advance if you need one. Fast forward to living happily ever after. Visit propertyrescue.co.uk. Property Rescue. Fast forward to sold.
Here you are, it's January again.
Nuh-uh. This is 2020, the year of the boss. The year you leave your same old job and boss the business of your #dreams. And with a 3 business plan, you get exclusive benefits from FreshBooks, Moo, WeWork, and Wix. Plus, you can get unlimited data, and you'll be 5G ready at no extra cost. So you can ride the wave of new biz like an absolute pro.
Get a plan fit for a boss, because 3 means business, just like you. Compatible device required. See 3.co.uk/5G.
The Dreams up to 50% off winter sale is now on. And until Tuesday, there's further reductions on a choice of beds and mattresses. And there's even free delivery. Don't miss out. Further reductions end Tuesday at Dreams. T's and C's and minimum spend applies.
I'll never belong. I gotta be me.
This new year, get the whole family singing with an extra £500 off list price across the Skoda range between the 16th and 30th of January. Also available when purchasing with our finance offers. Search Skoda New Year New Car for more details. Driven by something different. Skoda. Exclude Citigo EIV and all SE technology variants. Order by the 30th of January and register by the 31st of March 2020. Offer not available with contract hire. UK retail customers 18 plus. Finance subject to status. Terms and conditions apply. Visit skoda.co.uk.
The Nigel Farage Show on LBC. Call 0345 6060 973.
Can this royal crisis get any worse? It's your chance to give us your opinions and to ask questions of royal expert Phil Dampier, who's going to stay with me until the bottom of the hour. 0345 6060 973. HRH, His Royal Highness, Her Royal Highness, looking at the SussexRoyal.com website. That has been established for them, and bearing in mind that it now looks very likely that they will set up a foundation in the USA. What are the circumstances, or would it just be too extreme to contemplate? Is it possible that them keeping those titles could be under some sort of threat, some sort of risk?
Well, ultimately, it's up to the Queen. I've got a feeling she won't strip them of the titles because they did that with both Fergie and Diana. They remained the Duchess of York and the Princess of Wales, but they had their HRH taken away. And I think in hindsight that was seen as a mistake because that caused resentment amongst both of them, and Fergie certainly felt she didn't get enough money in her divorce settlement, and we all know the problems we've had with her ever since. So I think the Queen would be reluctant to do that, and I think she might feel that was going to, make things worse. So, but as I said earlier on, they didn't want a title for Archie, and he's 17 lines of the throne, he's above Anne, he's above Andrew. So they were kind of sending out a message to themselves that they weren't that bothered about titles. So it's certainly there. It's a potential sort of bargaining chip, if you like, and a potential punishment.
And yet, of course, in America, that title in Los Angeles, with American media, it's priceless, isn't it?
Well, they like to say that it is, but they sometimes call the Queen Her Royal Highness and get that wrong when they should call her Her Majesty. So they don't always, get these titles right. But yes, it would be a great selling point and a great asset to them on their headed notepaper. But as I say, I don't think she'll go that far. I think she wants to try and resolve this and be conciliatory. The problem is going to come when it comes to things like tax arrangements, security, and the money. That's where I think the biggest problem is going to be.
So clearly, the protection side,
yes,
which is 24/7. Although if they're not in this country, if they're going to spend most of it in Canada or America, that would be less of a bill, I suppose.
Yeah, it's not just the bill, but we've got a big precedent there because Princess Diana voluntarily got rid of her own Scotland Yard detectives. I know that Ken Wolfe, who was her personal bodyguard, says that she'd still be alive today if she hadn't have done that. That Scotland Yard coppers would never have allowed her to get into a car with a drunk driver. They would never have allowed her not to wear a seatbelt. And it was when that she was being looked after by private security of the Al-Fayeds that the accident happened. So, if William and if Harry and Meghan, got rid of or didn't have their Scotland Yard minders, would they have private security and would they be as safe? So it's a big problem, that.
A lesson from the past. James is a first-time caller to this show from Kilburn. James, good morning to you.
Oh, good morning, Nigel.
Good morning.
I don't feel we're being given the reasons about this. So I think there's a lot of speculation, but they don't seem to have actually come out and given the reasons as to why they want to take this action.
Well, let me ask Phil if he's got a better thought on that.
Yeah. Good morning, James. Yeah, I think you're right. We're not necessarily getting the real reasons. We're getting a lot of speculation on both sides, and we're getting a lot of blood and thunder. But we're not necessarily hearing exactly why they feel so put upon. And I think it does go back a great deal to the initial welcome or lack of welcome that Meghan thought she had, and that Harry thought support coming from William. Then there were rumours, of course, that Kate had a row with her about her wearing of a tiara and reduced Kate to tears. So that doesn't seem to have ever been healed, and it just seems to have festered since then and got worse. And I don't know, maybe if the Queen and Charles, who aren't the greatest of communicators sometimes, they tend to sort of lead their own lives and go off in their own way and live in different parts of the country. Charles is up in Scotland a lot, the Queen's at Sandringham. This summit tomorrow is the first time that they're actually all sort of getting together and really trying to thrash this out. So, hopefully they're going to get to the bottom of it. But if is Harry really going to give them the real reasons? I think that's a very good question. And I don't know the real reasons, and I don't think most people do. But I do feel that press harassment and racism are probably excuses.
Yeah, so do I. James, thanks for the call. Yeah, by the way, they're 6 weeks over in Vancouver Island. There was no press harassment of any kind, was there?
Not a single photographer got near them. It was only right at the end that that it was found out where they were staying. And even then they put round a legal letter to newspapers asking not to identify where they were. So they are very, very paranoid about because we saw that time when she went to Wimbledon and asked people not to take photographs of her. So I don't know quite what she thought was going to happen when she joined the royal family. People weren't going to notice
ways, can you? You can't have the publicity when you want it and not when it doesn't work like that. No. Brenda is calling from Richmond. Good morning, Brenda.
Hello, Nigel.
Good morning. So what do you make of it all, Brenda? Could it get even worse than it is?
I think it probably could get worse, especially if they give a no-holds-barred kind of Diana-esque interview to the American media, on TV and stuff. Mm-hmm. I think it could be a lot of hand-wringing and knowing looks and all sorts, and it would just be awful.
She's an actress.
But anyway, absolutely awful. It makes a sick bucket. To be honest, I'm not a fan of either of them, and I never have been. Yeah, so I have to put my cards right on the table. So that's the angle I'm coming at it from. So it is biased, but I don't like either of them. I'm not really a big fan of the royal family at all. I really do feel that this country could do with moving on. But I think
Brenda,
it certainly won't change that. What
Brenda, if we didn't have the Queen, we'd have a president like Neil Kinnock, wouldn't we?
Yeah, I think that honestly and truthfully, they're using the media as an excuse. That's my personal opinion. They're saying that so that they've got an excuse to go. They need an excuse. So they say media harassment's the reason why they want to go. I think the reason why they want to get out so quickly, and this is just my opinion, is that they're thinking in their mind's eye that the Duke of Edinburgh might pass this year. And if he does pass this year, then it will look really awful if they just cut and run, leaving the Queen, etc., mourning, etc., and all of those sorts of things. So I think they think, get out now before, if that was to happen, that was to happen.
All right, Brenda, thank you for your point of view. And actually, think about it, Phil. I mean, the Queen, she's got a 98-year-old husband who I think's losing or lost much of his eyesight and has not been in good health.
Certainly frail, yeah.
Certainly very frail. I mean, the Prince, Steve Allen, who does the early mornings here at LBC, said what a good week it had been for Prince Andrew. I mean, that story and effectively his withdrawal from public life. There's yet more stories about Fergie that keep, inappropriate business relationships that keep appearing. I mean, she's, as you said, she's nearly 94. She must be under a fair bit of stress.
I think she's under a fair bit of stress. I mean, her sort of way of dealing with it, as always, would be to go out and walk the dogs or go for a ride. Incredible, she's still out riding even now without a hard hat. But that's her way of dealing with it. And sometimes her way of dealing with things in the past, a bit like her mother, was to sort of bury her head in the sand and pretend things weren't happening. But she's not able to do that with this. But Charles wants a slimmed down monarchy. If you haven't got Andrew on the scene, if you haven't got Harry and Meghan on the scene,
looking pretty slim already, isn't
and they're in their 70s, Charles and Camilla, and the Queen and Prince Philip between them have 1,500 patronages. Now, who's going to take over those? Who's going to do those? He doesn't want Andrew on the scene. He doesn't want Beatrice and Eugenie to be on the scene. So they're running out of people who are going to do the work. Princess Anne's still working away in the background, but she's 70 this year. So it's not going to be. They need. There's no doubt about it. They needed Harry and Meghan. All this business that I think Tom Bradbury has been saying that they were forcing them out. I mean, I don't know why he was upset, Harry, about this photograph of the Queen and her 3 heirs, because that had been done before, and he's always known that he was a spare, not an heir.
It was a perfectly rational picture. Wasn't it?
I personally don't buy that he was offended by that. I think there was a fantastic role for them. I think it was all there, but for whatever reason, they just don't want to do it.
And how hard do the royal family work? I mean, for argument's sake, the Prince of Wales. I mean, how many engagements a year, perhaps, would he?
Well, he was at the near the top of the list this year. I mean, they're carrying out 400 or 500 engagements. Princess Anne's been doing that for the last 40 odd years.
Let's just stop a second and think about that. 400 to 500 public engagements in a year.
Yeah, she's been doing that for 4. I mean, obviously, sometimes she's doing 3 or 4 in a day, but it all mounts up. And how many other people are working at 94, 93? And Prince Philip only jacked it in when he was 95.
As someone who's done quite a lot of public engagements, I can tell you, actually, it's hard work.
Yeah.
You've got everyone looking at you. You make the slightest little mistake, they come down like a ton of bricks.
Well, when Prince Philip was ill, there was a certain amount of Twitter feed, and people were saying, "No, he's never done a day's work in his life." And I thought, you really don't know what you're talking about. First of all, he fought in the war.
He did,
and then he was in the Navy for 12 years, and then he's worked and worked. He's carried out something like 22,000 engagements over the best part of 70 years,
and travelled
5,000 speeches,
and travelled how many miles?
Well, he's been to about 200 countries. I mean, it's just extraordinary the workload he's got through, and he was a trailblazer in things like the World Wildlife Fund and all sorts of things like that, and the Duke of Edinburgh Award scheme. So to say he's never done any work or put in his shift is ridiculous.
It certainly is. Joe is a first-time caller from Wimbledon. Good morning, Joe.
Hello, good morning to you both. I think it's a little more than a little unfair, actually. This is all being laid at Meghan's feet. I think Harry, for some time now, particularly, and I was quite shocked, and I'm not easily shocked, when he said nobody wants the top job, i.e. the throne. So, that sort of speaks volumes, and I think he's also been saying things for a long time, sort of things slightly under the, not so overt as that. Words to the effect that he doesn't really want to be a part of this. So as saying that she's the one that's orchestrated it all, although I do think it's a little bit rich that they're expecting to sort of go off into the sunset with the title so that they can make capital out of it. But what else would they do?
Joe, look, I have to say, whatever Meghan's role in all of this, I blame Harry. You know, he was born to this. He knew what the deal was. He's known it for the whole of his life. So I'm absolutely with you on that in terms of that criticism, Joe. And Joe, if they want to go and live, I tell you what, if they want to go and live in Canada, Los Angeles, and if they want to set up a foundation, and if they want to earn tens of millions of dollars every year, which they could certainly do in the States, I've no doubt about that, that's fine. But don't keep the title HRH. Don't keep the house at Frogmore. Don't keep, the security guards and all. That's how I feel. You know, Phil, what do you? I mean,
yeah, I think you're absolutely right, Joe. I think it's unfair to blame Meghan for all of it. I think Harry is obviously. I think it's down to both of them. I think it's 50-50. I mean, he's made comments long before he met her about how he didn't really like this country particularly. He admitted it. He wanted to spend as much time as he wanted to in Africa. He went off in the army, of course. You'd never seen him as happy as when he was in Afghanistan and when he was in the army and when he was with his mates. And that's when he looked his happiest. And he looks his happiest now when he's at the Invictus Games with old friends from the army days, you know. And I absolutely agree with you. It is partly his fault. He should have seen it coming. He should have thought perhaps a bit longer. After all, William and Kate dated for 8 years, didn't they, before they finally tied the knot. He rushed into it within a year or two. It was obviously difficult, their relationship, because he was flying back and forth across the Atlantic. Not a very good carbon footprint there, but he probably.
But it's not all her fault, is it?
He didn't want to lose. He didn't want to lose, and maybe he rushed into it and didn't think about it.
Joe, we take your point on board very much. Now, Phil thought he was going. He's not. He's staying for another quarter of an hour, because in a moment we're going to speak to a Royal Marine. In fact, somebody who was an officer in the SBS, was highly decorated. And remember that Prince Harry holds a big title in the Royal Marines. In a moment we'll come to that. For now, it's 10:30 and time for the news with Philip Chryssikos.
Britain's ambassador to Iran says arresting diplomats is illegal after he was detained and later released in Tehran. Rob McCare says he went to an advertised event as a vigil for the victims of the Ukrainian plane crash and left when it turned into a protest. Senior members of the royal family will meet at Sandringham tomorrow to finalise the Duke and Duchess of Sussex's future royal roles and funding. Prince Harry will join the Queen and Princes Charles and William. A study has found most business leaders in London believe the HS2 rail project costs too much and will cause too much disruption whilst being built. A survey of 500 businesses found only 40% thought the high-speed line would improve the UK's economy. LBC weather. Sunny spells, mixed with showers across the northwestern parts of Scotland and central England until early afternoon. Windy in the far north, a high of 10 degrees.
This is LBC.
Let's hear it for Max. He put the spring into Springer Spaniel until he sprained his leg after one heroic river leap too many. Luckily, his family didn't have to splash out, because Pets in a Pickle had Max covered. And now, he's sprung back into action. For pet insurance policies as unique as they are, get a free quote today at petsinapickle.co.uk.
The real reason Sleeping Beauty fell asleep was because it was taking so long for the palace to sell, and the handsome prince needed the proceeds to buy their new home with no time to dwell.
I know who can help. Property Rescue. I'll contact them straight away.
So he spoke to their friendly team who took care of every detail. They bought the palace direct with no legal fees to pay. Fast forward to living happily ever after. Visit propertyrescue.co.uk. Property Rescue. Fast forward to solve.
Hello? It's time you swapped your daily grind for some sun, sea, and salsa! Sangria! Sun lounger! Siesta! Salsa! The dip! Sandal! Suntan lotion! We've done salsa, ain't we? In the Seychelles, Spain, or anywhere else in the world at surprisingly low prices. When you need a holiday, it's time to Travel Republic. Book with confidence, ATOL protected.
The Dreams up to 50% off winter sale is now on. And until Tuesday, there's further reductions on a choice of beds and mattresses. And there's even free delivery. Don't miss out. Further reductions end Tuesday at Dreams. T's and C's and minimum spend applies.
Fancy watching a film?
Could do. What's on?
This looks good. Spiders on a train.
What's it about?
Spiders knocking about on a train.
Sometimes the name says it all. Like the Big Tasty from McDonald's, with succulent beef, cheese, sliced tomato, lettuce, onions, and lashings of our Big Tasty sauce. Available with or without bacon. Served after 11 a.m. until the 28th of January. Participating restaurants only, subject to availability.
Looking for your perfect kitchen? Visit roomsense.co.uk.
Quality at a price you can afford. That's Room Sense.
Here you are, it's January again.
Nuh-uh. This is 2020, the year of the boss. The year you leave your same old job and boss the business of your #dreams. And with a 3 business plan, you get exclusive benefits from FreshBooks, Moo, WeWork, and Wix. Plus, you can get unlimited data, and you'll be 5G ready at no extra cost. So you can ride the wave of new biz like an absolute pro.
Get a plan fit for a boss, because 3 means business, just like you. Compatible device required. See 3.co.uk/5G.
The Nigel Farage Show on LBC. Call 0345 6060 973.
Well, as you, of course, know, Harry served in Afghanistan. He did 10 years in the Blues and Royals, and over the last couple of years, he has taken on some of the responsibilities, military responsibilities, that used to be held by the Duke of Edinburgh. And one of the most prestigious titles that Harry holds is he is the Captain General of the Royal Marines. And I'm wondering, how are former military colleagues, how are the military in this country in general viewing this idea that a member of the royal family is going to effectively resign their position, or at least half their position? Well, joining me to talk about that is James Glancy. Now, I must declare an interest, a political interest, because James is a Brexit Party MEP, at least for the next fortnight he is. But we're not talking about politics, because James is a former Royal Marine, an officer in the Special Boat Service, decorated for his actions in Afghanistan. James, good morning.
Morning, Nigel. How are you?
I am well, but I think this, James, I think that Harry was born into this position, and with it comes a lot of privilege, money, opportunity, chance to travel the world, but also something called duty. And I feel he's rather turned his back on his duty. How do you, as a former Royal Marine and SBS officer, he is, of course, your Captain General, James.
Yeah, I totally agree. And duty is the right word. And that is why we have so much respect for the Royals, is because they've dedicated their lives to the country, and they serve. And they never ask for any commercial opportunities, anything else. They serve our country, and they hold patronages as a result of their birthright. Now, Harry's been a great public servant. He's did 2 tours of Afghanistan. I was there on one of his tours. I remember him on the net. He's done a brilliant work in charity since he's left the armed forces, especially with the Invictus Games and other conservation charities. But his behaviour in the last year is not becoming of somebody that holds these important positions, these patronages, including that of the Captain General. Now, I've spoken to other Royal Marines and other people in the military, and they're very upset, if not disgusted, by the disrespect to the Queen, by not discussing this. Everybody agrees that if he wants to leave those positions, if he wants to go abroad with his wife, he's absolutely entitled to have another life, and he's entitled to live overseas. But you can't do this half and half. You're either in or you're out. And what's even worse is the thought of this privatisation of the monarchy. Everyone was up in arms when they talked about the Americans privatising the NHS. Well, of course, the public is up in arms about a Canadian wanting to privatise the monarchy. It's not acceptable. You either do one or the other. But you don't sit as Captain General or in any other position and think you can make millions of pounds, because that opportunity is not available to a soldier, to a Marine who's on £20,000 a year. They can't turn up to their commanding officer and say, you know what, boss, actually, I'm going to go and live in another country, but would you mind still paying me?
And James, is it right that you said that you would not, at a Royal Marine get-together, toast your Captain General?
I think I've already said that in a bit of haste. The bottom line is, if Harry continues to devote himself as HRH, as he has done, of course I would do. He has been an admirable public servant. But if he does go down this route of semi-privatising his role, earning millions, and then thinks he can continue to gain our respect, no, I wouldn't.
So what does he need to do, James? Does he need to make clear that actually he's going to spend most of his time in this country?
It's not about time. I think he's got a right to live with his family wherever he wants. But you cannot commercialise this operation. It's one or the other. In the military, you are paid a small amount of money and you serve your country because That's what you sign up to do. You don't get paid and decide you're going to have a second career on the side. That's not how it works. And that is not how it works being a royal.
James, thank you very much indeed for joining us this morning. Well, that was former Royal Marine officer in Special Boat Service, decorated veteran from Afghanistan, and I thought, Phil, he very eloquently put the case that the royal family are known for their service to the country, and this is effectively privatising the monarchy.
I thought for someone like James to talk like that, I thought it was very, very telling, Nigel. I mean, that clearly came from his heart, and I think it pained him to tell him to tell it like it is. You know, I mean, when these guys go out and fight, they fight for Queen and country, don't they? And it really matters to them. And the thought that you're not 100% behind your Colonel in Chief is a terrible one. I'm sure he'd like to see Harry continue with his work with the Invictus Games. I'm sure he thinks that's a fantastic thing. But if he feels he's commercialising the military and not taking it seriously, you can see he's really upset by it, and because he's a great fan of Harry, and a lot of people are.
Yeah, he spoke there with, I thought, terrific passion, and sort of passion, but you almost detected a little bit of anger, perhaps, in the voice.
Yeah, I mean, there are moves afoot to remove Prince Andrew from various regiments. So we're going to have a problem. We're going to have a job lot of if this goes on. It's very, very worrying, isn't it? And I'm sure the Queen is very, and I'm sure Prince Philip is as well. I mean, he's not, although he's not physically that well, he's mentally very sharp, and he's quoted in one of the papers this morning as telling someone, what the hell do they think they're playing at? And I'm sure for his service that he's given in the Navy and the number of regiments he's associated with, he will identify with. And as you say, so many of them he's handed over to Harry and thought they were in good hands.
Yes, I think they really did think they were in good hands. Let's go to Catherine, who's calling from Chislehurst. Good morning, Catherine.
Hello, Mr. Farage.
Good morning.
It would seem the monarchy is harder to get out of. And it's possibly even more of Hotel California than the EU.
Well, Catherine, the EU was a political choice. In fact, we joined the EEC, but
if you're saying you can't make parallels between other things, I think that's ridiculous.
I wasn't born. No, he was born. I mean, this is the point here. He didn't opt.
Are you saying then there is no exit? But everybody's entitled to freedom except the monarchy. Is that what you're saying?
I'll tell you what I'm saying, Catherine. Okay, what I'm saying is this. If you want to leave, you can. But you drop the title, you drop the grace and favour residences, you drop the security detail, and you go off and live a private life. Of course, he's entitled as a human being and as a husband and a father. If he makes that decision, that's fine. But you can't.
I'm rather sympathetic to them because I think maybe they just want to take back control. Remember that phrase?
Catherine,
they want to take back control.
I don't bring Brexit into every argument,
Don't you think that 20 months is a little bit of a short time to jack it all in? I mean, Edward VIII...
I do think so. I do think, though, like the Brexit debate, though, and I will go back to Brexit.
You like Brexit?
All this should have been discussed before.
Of course it should,
They even got married.
Yeah.
Was there enough discussion? This would have entailed, they should have told them, serving the country. And it's a bit like an institution you can get out of, or there will be serious repercussions. We don't know this. No. But why I am sympathetic towards them is certainly there were acres and acres of stuff written in the papers, not about racism, because I don't even use the word anti-racist really in a way, because there are ethnicities. There's only one human race, right? I don't know anybody. There are different ethnicities. And that's what I'll say. But what I will say is there was a lot of thing about her being very uppity. She's an American. I'm Anglo-American. So I know what it's like. I get this from people, too, sometimes. A lot of people saying, oh, well, you Americans don't understand. They don't know I have an English parent as well.
Catherine, we all loved her when she arrived on the scene. It was a fairy tale wedding, and the first few public engagements she did, everybody thought, this is amazing, because it's bringing the monarchy, it's bringing something to a younger generation of people in this country. Many also thought that perhaps there'd be more members of the black community might engage more with the royal. Catherine, I think we gave her absolutely every chance.
The problem started, Catherine, when they started lecturing people about climate change and then taking private jets. They didn't want anyone to know about Archie's birth, and they lied, in fact, about Archie's birth and his christening, tried to keep that top secret. Now, if Princess Diana had still been around, I'm sure she would have told Harry that the birth of Archie was a joyous event that could have been shared by the nation and produced some photographs or a bit of clip of people going into their christening. That's when when the problem started, when they started the hypocrisy, and that's what people don't like. And up until then, I agree with Nigel. I think she'd had a perfectly good press.
No, she did.
She certainly hasn't been harassed by the paparazzi or chased down the road like Diana was.
Like it used to be. No, Catherine, got to let you go. Phil, I love you and leave you in a moment, but I'm now going to ask you an impossible question.
Yes.
Because I'm this side of the table and you're that side of the table. What's going to happen tomorrow?
Well, I think we're going to be told what's happened. I think the way that they're briefing at the moment, the Palace aren't going to hang around. I think they are going to give us a sort of, a little bit of a version of what has gone on behind closed doors, which didn't happen in the 1990s. That was very much a secret. But so I think we'll get some sort of flavour of it. But I think at this stage, it's only going to be a framework, and I don't think we're going to get the details. So it's going to take some weeks to thrash it out. But I think what they're really doing at the moment is probably buying some time.
Thank you, Phil, for joining us. Well, that was Phil Dampier, royal commentator, author of Royally Suited, Harry and Meghan, in their own words. It's just you and me for the next few minutes, and I want to know, is this crisis going to worsen? I really fear that not much is going to be concluded tomorrow. I do hope I'm wrong. I'm a monarchist. I'm a monster supporter of the Queen, but I'm very, very worried about where we are now. You're listening to the Sunday edition of the Nigel Farage Show here on LBC, and it's 10:45.
Nick Ferrari at breakfast. Weekday mornings from 7.
Western intelligence that the passenger jet that crashed shortly after takeoff from Tehran on Wednesday was accidentally shot down by an Iranian anti-aircraft missile. Joining me in the studio is the US Ambassador to the United Kingdom, Ambassador Woody Johnson. Where do you think Tehran might go next?
Well, we'll see. Hopefully this is something that will open the door to peace discussions with the president, what he's been asking for, and they'll pick up the phone.
Why didn't he pick up the phone to our Prime Minister Boris Johnson and tell him in advance of the strike?
Well, I'm not sure that didn't happen.
Oh, he did?
I'm not saying it did or didn't. I don't know.
Well, you're the ambassador. You must have a sense. If anyone knows in this country,
I know that
Mr. Johnson's you.
Nick Ferrari at breakfast.
With Xero, get your business digital ready with Xero accounting software.
LBC.
The Dreams up to 50% off winter sale is now on. And until Tuesday, there's further reductions on a choice of beds and mattresses. And there's even free delivery. Don't miss out. Further reductions end Tuesday at Dreams. T's and C's and minimum spend applies.
My name's Luke. I live in Dunstable with my wife and 4 daughters. We've got a Ring doorbell too out the front. Every time there's someone who comes up to the door, it notifies my phone, and then I can actually see if there's anyone dodgy at the door. A while ago, we had an incident at the house. My wife and I was in bed about 1:30 in the morning. We got a notification on my Ring app on my phone. So I looked on the actual video itself, and it showed me that he was trying to get underneath the mat to see if there was a key there so he can actually get into the house. The video clip allowed the police to see exactly who is in front of the camera and where that person was touching the door, and that allowed the crime scene technician to dust for prints. Thanks to the video clip and his fingerprints, that was enough to convict him. The most important thing for me is when I'm not here during the night, I need to know that the family's safe, and Ring Doorbell does that.
Join Luke and the millions of people protecting their homes with Ring. Learn more at ring.com.
At last, a technology that's impossible to ignore! Welcome to radio. Advertising that's unscrollable. See radio differently at radiocentre.org.
What is luxury? A state of mind, free time, a Caribbean vista, that place you love. It's more than you expect. It's perfection, it's opulence, it's service. The ultimate holiday. Luxury included all the time. The big sale is now on at Sandals, voted the world's leading all-inclusive resorts at the World Travel Awards. 2 hearts, 1 name. Sandals.co.uk.
Driving in London can be tough. I know, I drive for a living. But there's good news. Ola, the global ride-hailing app, is starting operations in London this January. My friends in Birmingham say it's a company that cares for its drivers. I'm excited about the 0% commission offer they're running all through this January and February. Oh, and you also get payments next working day, straight to your account. I've already signed up at olaride.uk, and I'm looking forward to earning more every day with Ola. When are you signing up?
This is LBC, the Nigel Farage Show. Call 0345 6060 973. Text 84850. Tweet at LBC using the hashtag Farage on LBC.
Well, your message is flowing in. Caroline says to me, stop talking Meghan down. She just fell in love. Don't talk rubbish. No, she did fall in love, but she fell in love with a senior member of the British royal family. She must have known what that meant, mustn't she? But Dintra says to me, come on, time to update the Crown. It's modern times. You're keeping medieval principles, Nigel. Well, I tell you what, if duty is a medieval principle, then hands up, I'm guilty, because that is the way it works with the royal family. And I did say, if you listened, that actually what happened in the mid-90s, after the Annus Horribilis, opening up Buckingham Palace to the public, paying income tax, they were the right, wise things to do. Of course the monarchy needs to move with the times, but not the principle of duty. And I thought, wasn't former SBS officer James Glancy very powerful on this? What he was angry about, he saw them using their HRH titles for commercial opportunity. He saw that as the privatisation of the monarchy, and he put the point very, very powerfully. Lorraine says they want the best of both worlds. Meghan must have known what was ahead of her when she married into the family. Lorraine, I agree. Jim from Manchester says it's not a crisis other than in the media bubble. No, Jim, it's a crisis as to how this country is viewed around the world. Do not underestimate the respect that Her Majesty the Queen has right across the world, and she seemed to be a very important symbol for this country. I hope I'm wrong. I really hope I am wrong. But I sense that whatever agreement is patched up tomorrow isn't actually going to be the solution. Let's go to Martin, who's calling from Harrogate. Martin, good morning to you.
Good morning to you, sir. This is the tip of the iceberg, Nigel.
Oh, dear.
I feel that there's far more. I think Meghan's already got her agenda. I think whatever's agreed tomorrow or they start talking about, I think you'll find that there'll be no agreement. If it's not what Meghan wants, then it's not going to happen, Nigel. And my gut feeling is Her Majesty is in a very, very, very difficult situation because, there's going to be royal children that are going to get married in the future. Do you turn around and say, well, look, sorry, you're going to have to sign some sort of agreement before the actual wedding itself? I just think, Nigel, that there's a lot more to come out of this. And I think that if they do have 6 months abroad, if they do have 6 months here, I'm afraid, Nigel, it simply isn't going to work.
No, Martin, on the practical front, I think I'd rather agree with you. Let's go to David in Norwich. David, good morning.
Good morning, Nigel. Well, I really think that Meghan has set her agenda from day one, and I think she knows exactly what she's doing. You've only got to look at the way she was acting at Wimbledon when she didn't want anybody around her, nobody taking any photos.
Isn't that bizarre?
She's caught Harry at a very vulnerable time. He's in that royal family. All his brothers, sisters, or whatever, they've all got families. He hasn't. He's trying to look for a family. She's seen that, and now he's got to go into this meeting tomorrow. He's got to come out of that meeting, whatever it is. Where is she? Where is she to comfort the man?
Well, it would appear she couldn't bear spending too much time on British soil, could she? She was straight back to Canada.
That wouldn't overcome love, then. That wouldn't overcome love. No, she knows what she's doing, mate, I think. She knows exactly what she's doing.
Do you feel a titchy bit sorry for Harry, then, David?
I feel very sorry for Harry. He's done a lot, and I think because it reminds me of my past life, which I'm not going to go into, but he's done a lot, and he was there. He was there for everybody. He was there for our soldiers. He's there for the disabled.
I know,
soldiers.
and David, he's done such great things. But how could he have treated the Queen like this? I don't know, David. I'm going to let you go. Melvin picks up on that theme and says, "I think Harry has been so disrespectful to the Queen. So do I, Melvin. One thing Harry should remember is that his grandmother has always been there for him in good times and in bad times." I think that is actually a very powerful message. I'm off to Northolt to speak to Pat. Good morning, Pat.
Good morning, Nigel. first-time caller with you.
Welcome.
I'll keep it short. I'm 63. I know how women manipulate men. I'm sorry to say. I've witnessed it with friends over the years.
This is a sexist comment, Pat.
Case. Well, Nigel, I think that she wants to be the next Kardashians, which is fine. You want to go out there and make a whole load of money on the back of the royals, so be it. But firstly, take off your website, Her Royal Highness, so on and so forth, and just call yourself Mrs. Markle.
Yeah, SussexRoyal.com,
Yes, I mean, you know, they want to be separate, but at the same time, they're using all the tools to boost themselves. It's like with the Kardashians, good on them. They've made literally billions. But, you know, they had a bloody good start. And if you look at the way Markle behaves, Nigel, she always manages to time everything to get maximum exposure. Look at, for example, when the president came. Like him or not, he was the president of the United States. Oh, she couldn't see him because she was not well. Yeah. The day after, when she wasn't required, suddenly she was out, wasn't she, if I remember correctly? She was out and about doing something. She recovered miraculously from her maternity, whatever it was.
So why does her husband, Pat?
Well, because he's a lovely boy, in my opinion, and he's the typical young man who's fallen, hook, line and sinker, and he's completely blind. He's blind to being manipulated.
So, Pat, where does it all end? I mean, does he finish up? Does he finish up like Edward VIII, living in exile?
Well, the sad thing is, I think that the British nation. I mean, I'm an Italian national, and I love, you know, as far as I'm concerned, I'm British. I love, you know, the royal family, and I think they do a lot of good and for the country and so on. I think that the country will embrace him if he comes back at some point with his head a bit, you know, down, saying, I made a mistake, I chose the wrong girl. We'll all want him back. But for her, everything is a calculation. It's calculated. And they have to leave the royal family to make all these literally hundreds of millions that they will make.
Pat, you've put the case against Meghan Markle very powerfully, very strongly. I thank you for the call. I'm sure others will think Pat was being unfair. But, I mean, 20 months. This is the point Phil Dampier was making. The wedding was only 20 months ago. It's almost as if they've come and had a quick look and decided, no, it's not for me. Anna Maria says, I neither like nor dislike the family. I'm Irish. But I do feel sorry for the Queen. And also, to announce it the day before Kate's birthday was just cruel. And yes, it was. Last Thursday was Kate's birthday. The announcement broke at about 20 to 7 on the Wednesday evening. Let's go to Colin, who's a first-time caller from Alton. Colin, good morning to you.
Good morning, Nigel. My point is very simple. I don't think this has anything to do with the money. And I think all this speculation about them wanting to cash in and use their HRHs to make money has got anything to do with it. Mm-hmm. I don't think that he really cares at all about the money. I don't think he really cares about the titles. I think he's got a wife who is very unhappy because she took on something and found she couldn't cope with it. This is what she said in South Africa. She said she'd been warned that the tabloids will crucify you and you won't be able to take it. She said, I thought, because I'm in the media, I would be able to take it, but I can't. So I just think this is a man protecting his wife, a woman he loves, and it's not calculated on her part. She just simply cannot cope with 7 days of the Daily Mail and everything about her father and all the other printing things that have done. And I think that they've had in the most terrible time.
Colin, what they've had from the tabloids is, I'm going to put this to you, as nothing compared to what Prince Charles and Camilla went through year after year after year. And you know something, Colin? Almost anybody, if I think back to 2014, the stuff being written about me, I just didn't bother to read it. Wouldn't they have been better off to ignore it and just get on with their lives?
Yeah, but you're an immensely strong person, Nigel, probably one of the people who's changed the entire face of Europe single-handedly. But for you, none of this would have happened. So I don't think you compare yourself, or even Charles, who had no choice at all.
He took some stick, though, didn't he?
He is going to be king. He could have had to have abdicated before he'd even got there. I think this is just a second son. He was turned down by his two previous girlfriends who did not want to go into the life in the goldfish bowl that they've had. Yeah. And he's found somebody who did love him and who he loves, and now he has to protect her.
Colin, you've put the argument there for them in a very, very sympathetic way. Well, I'm going to keep this going for at least another half an hour because after the news, I'll be joined by Ingrid Seward, and she's editor-in-chief of Majesty magazine, and we're going to talk a little bit about Prince Harry, about the trauma that happened to him as a young man. He was just 12 years old when his mother was tragically and so publicly killed. Of course, he's done great work, but, you know, where does this leave Harry? What is all this doing to Harry? And we should talk about that. So keep your calls coming, 0345 6060 973. I have to say, I still think there is the potential for this to get a lot worse for the royal family. And this at a time after the disgrace of Prince Andrew. This really is an annus horribilis, and it's only the middle of January.
On your radio, on Global Player, and
Play LBC.
leading Britain's conversation. This is LBC.
From Global's newsroom at 11 o'clock, the Foreign Secretary describing the arrest of a British ambassador to Iran as a flagrant violation of international law. Rob Murkaya was detained for several hours in Tehran before being released. He says he wasn't attending a protest, but what was billed as a vigil for the victims of the Ukrainian plane crash. It's as Donald Trump praises those protesters, saying he's inspired by their courage. Sebastian Gorka, a former aide to President Trump, has told LBC the world is a safer place with Mr. Trump in office.
Donald Trump has reasserted American leadership and doesn't go on international apology tours like Obama did when he came into office, and nor do we fund terror regimes anymore like he did. So I really don't understand how individuals in cabinet positions in the UK can be such victims and hostages to fake news.
People have gathered outside a church in Sandringham, Norfolk, hoping to catch a glimpse of the Queen attending church. It's ahead of Her Majesty chairing a meeting tomorrow with other senior royals to decide the future roles and funding for Prince Harry and Meghan. Princes Charles and William will be at that meeting, along with the Duke of Sussex. The Prime Minister is in Muscat to pay his respects following the death of the Sultan of Oman, whose death at the age of 79 was announced yesterday. Sultan Qaboos bin Said was the longest ruling monarch in the Middle East after seizing power from his father in 1970. Boris Johnson will attend a condolence ceremony with Prince Charles, the Defence Secretary Ben Wallace and the Chief of the Defence Staff, General Sinead Carter. After decades in business, Mothercare will disappear from high streets and retail parks this afternoon. All of the baby chain's 79 shops will close with a loss of more than 2,500 jobs. Mothercare went into administration last month. Gales of up to 80 miles per hour are expected across parts of the UK tomorrow when Storm Brendan sweeps in. The Met Office has a yellow warning for Northern Ireland and western areas of England, Scotland and Wales. Forecaster Alex Burkill has told LBC what those parts should expect.
If you are travelling, particularly during Monday's evening rush hour, there could be some delays there. As well as that, some public transport will be affected and bridges could be closed as well because these type of winds are very strong.
Liverpool have set a new European Football Club record for the best ever start to a Premier League season. They've won 20 of their 21 matches, drawing the other following their 1-0 win against Tottenham yesterday. LBC weather. Sunny spells mixed in with showers across the northwest of Scotland and central England until early afternoon. Windy in the far north, a high of 10 degrees. From Global's newsroom, for LBC, I'm Philip Chrysikos.
We've all had the odd great idea, like careering down that black run when you've never even worn a pair of skis before. Or that legendary Christmas when you tried to cook a turkey in the microwave. Well, forget about face planting in the snow or wrestling with poultry. How about trying something new? Like treating yourself to a brand new set from our greatest ever range. Because before the 31st of January, you'll get a whopping £1,000 off the perfect model for you. Now that's got to be a great idea. Just visit sayat.co.uk to download your voucher.
Register for downloadable voucher online. Orders until 31st of January 2020. Registered from 1st of January 2020. UK 18 plus excludes Me Electric and Taraco. 0% offer. Retail sales of new cars at participating dealers only. Cannot be used with any other voucher. T's and C's apply.
This is LBC from Global, leading Britain's conversation. The Nigel Farage Show.
the front page of today's Sunday Times, Prince William is alleged to have said to a friend, "I've put my arm around my brother all of our lives. I can't do it anymore." There are other newspaper reports suggesting that some members of the royal family may not have spoken to each other, and I'm talking here about Kate and Meghan, for up to 6 months. So there clearly is a very, very big rift, and I'm wondering, what is all this doing to Harry? What decisions is he going to make? What side of this argument does he come down on ultimately? And I also worry, for the Queen, what is she going to say tomorrow? Is she going to take a hard line, a soft line? Well, joining me to examine this particular aspect is Ingrid Seward, author of many books on the royal family, including one entitled William and Harry, and editor-in-chief of Majesty magazine. Ingrid, good morning and welcome to LBC.
Good morning.
So far in the first hour, we have people ringing who are very sympathetic to Harry. They say, look, he's fallen in love with this woman, he's got a young child, they must be his first priority. And then we have others ringing in saying, well, he was born to royal privilege, and that brings with it duty, and he's letting the side down. And they're the two arguments that I'm hearing. Just how torn do you think Prince Harry is?
Well, I think he probably is confused. He strikes me as being very confused and has been for some time. I mean, of course, he understands all about duty. He was in the army. He served 2 terms in Afghanistan. He understands about duty and Queen and country. We all know that, as all your listeners, I mean, all your participants have been saying, which has been really interesting this morning. But I think deep down, Harry doesn't quite know who Harry is. And when he was in Afghanistan the first time, he said, very tellingly, I don't want to be a prince. I just want to be anything other than a prince. And then much more recently, which one of your listeners pointed out, he said, who wants to be king? If I was king, I'd go and do my own shopping, which, I mean, is completely the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. But Harry feels that. It seems to me he can't quite come to terms with what has become his situation. And I think a lot of this goes back to the time that, when his mother died, nobody apparently, I'm told this, by a great friend of Harry's, nobody actually sat William and Harry down and said, now, this is what's happened to your mum. She wasn't murdered. It was a tragic accident. And this is the consequences. No one really sat down and talked to them, which I find very surprising.
In a way, you can see that the circumstances of Diana's death, you can see why both William and Harry would not have a great love of the press, the paparazzi, very understandably. And I've noticed sometimes when he's with Meghan and the press are there, he almost glowers at the press as if to say, I'm going to protect my wife against you. But to go to the lengths, Ingrid, where he's suing national newspapers, I mean, is there precedent for this in the royal family?
Well, the royal family have sued newspapers before, and but usually only because they've reproduced a letter. Well, I suppose in this case it is a letter, isn't it?
Yes.
When Edward left the Royal Marines, the son, I think, reproduced a letter that Philip had written to the commander-in-chief of the Royal Marines, and which I think was himself, but he'd written to the head honcho, if you like, of the Royal Marines, and this letter somehow made its way to the son, and they reproduced it, and the royal family sued over that. So it's more those sort of things that they've sued over. But I think it's a great mistake for anyone to take on suing a newspaper unless they know exactly what they're doing, because it's very unpleasant.
Yeah.
And Associated, who they are suing, are very powerful, and it's not easy because they're going to have to lay down everything. So this is what you said, this is what they said, and it goes on and on and on.
And takes lots of energy and lots of time. Now, tomorrow we have what is being dubbed as the Showdown at Sandringham. What line do you think or anticipate the Queen will take with her grandson?
Well, I think the Queen will stay quite quiet and allow her private secretary to do the talking and allow her son, after all. I mean, Prince Charles, it's his son, and it's the Queen. I think the Queen will be in the background, very powerfully in the background, but I think she will let most of the other people do the talking.
Does Charles have much? Does Charles have a great deal of authority or respect from Prince Harry, in your view?
I think that Charles and Harry were very close. I think, Charles was very close with all the boys, but I don't think in recent times either of them have really listened to their father. And I think they slightly resent what they see as his enormous offices and his enormous number of staff. And, they didn't have that. And yet they're doing a huge amount of work. I think there's a sort of very strange resentment there, but I mean, obviously this is pulling them all together again.
Yeah. Well, let's hope it does. Yes, let's hope it is effective in that way. And Ingrid, finally, if we think about back through the last few decades, republicanism in this country has been a really, really tiny fringe minority view. Yet, if we go back over centuries, it was a lot stronger at times. Do you think that this crisis has the potential to do real harm to the public standing of the monarchy in this country?
I think it has the potential. I don't say that I think it will, but it certainly has the potential. I think every crisis that's happened to the monarchy over the, in the last sort of 40 years has had potential to do harm. I mean, the death of Diana did immense harm to the monarchy. And I think that because Meghan is American and she's a free spirit, and I think that the Queen had such high hopes for her and Harry as a unit. If they disappear, I think the monarchy will be seen as probably very old-fashioned and unable to adapt, which is something the Queen has always tried to do, maybe a little bit slowly, but she's always tried to adapt the monarchy to keep it up with the times.
Yes, well, she's facing, at nearly 94, yet another huge challenge. Ingrid, thank you very much indeed for joining us this morning. That was Ingrid Seward, author of many books on the royal family, including one called William and Harry. And I thought the most important, strongest point she made was that she said Harry doesn't quite know who he is. And I guess if you're in that level of indecision, goodness me, he must be going through a very difficult time. But many feel let down by him at the same time. Is this crisis going to resolve itself tomorrow at the Sandringham summit, or is there worse to come? I still fear there is worse to come. And I really do fear that big sit down with an American broadcaster. And I'm sure when they all meet tomorrow, I'm sure the Queen, Prince Charles and William will be very, very conscious of that. Muscab is a first-time caller to LBC from Ealing. Good morning to you.
Good morning. So I couldn't care less that they're leaving the UK, but the fact that they're keeping the HRH status, we know that they're going to use it to make money in the US, which is like demeaning to the royal family in the UK, and they're not going to be willing to get rid of it tomorrow because then they wouldn't make as much money.
But if the Queen was to strip them of the HRH title, that may look a little bit vindictive, mightn't it?
Yeah, I get that, but if they start using it like on television shows in the US, it will just completely demean the
I agree with you, and I thought it was a very interesting phrase that we got from the former Royal Marine and SBS officer James Glancy earlier, when he said, we cannot have the privatisation of the monarchy. That made sense, that phrase, didn't it?
Yeah, because that's what they're doing. Because the media, being whatever biased against them, that what they claim is basically a gift towards them, because that's the reason they can leave. They're going to use that as an excuse, which makes sense because it's an easy excuse and Americans will eat it up. But
so is the choice, Muscab, is the choice at Sandringham tomorrow that should be put to Prince Harry, it's one or the other, make your mind up?
Yeah. I think they'll still make a lot of money, which is what they want to do if they move to the, if they get rid of the HRH, but I don't think he'll be willing to let it go.
No. Okay. No, I think you make the point very, very well. And, there's quite a few people there. So you see, it does matter, doesn't it? If they want to go off as private citizens and do what the hell they like, they can do it. But, and I think there's quite a strong level of support for this view, they cannot keep the title, they can't keep the house, they can't keep the money. That I think is the overwhelming opinion of people in this country. Michelle is calling from Wakefield, and my screen tells me that you haven't called LBC for 25 years, Michelle. Is that right?
Well, I'm a first-time caller. I've listened for 25 years.
You listened for 25 years. Right, OK. So something has really, after a quarter of a century, got you to pick up the phone and dial the number. Please tell us what it is.
Well, I don't understand why everybody's as shocked as what they're making out. I do think the minute they got engaged, there must have been talks with the firm around all what's happening now. I think they must have foreseen it. Meghan's American. They're in a family which is part American, so it was always going to be on the cards. And I think the meeting tomorrow, and they give him the ultimatum, I don't actually think they want to keep their status. And I think Harry will say, no, I think they put that in the tweet because they're trying to be respectful and say that they will do, work under that status.
So you think Michelle, literally, Harry just wants to jack the whole thing in?
Yes. I definitely 100% do, and I don't think that they will struggle at all, monetary-wise.
Oh, they won't. No. Michelle, they will earn ridiculous amounts of money in the USA. Of course they will, even without the title.
I think it is quite sad. Personally think it is quite sad. I mean, we all know what went on with Harry and William, and, we've all watched them grow up. But the minute he got engaged, I called it, and I said it'll be about a year before he goes to America. Definitely, because he's never been happy, and he's never been happier since he's been with her, and he wants to protect that at all costs.
So, do you have some sympathy for him, Michelle?
Yes, definitely.
So, yeah, okay. No, well, you may be right. What I don't believe, what I think you can't be right, is if the royal family at the start, at the engagement, had known this, then I don't think his brother would have advised him carefully, have you spent enough time thinking about this? I think they just simply told him not to.
But I honestly think that it's always been on the cards, and I think that he's doing the right thing. I know a lot of the media have been kind to them, and the media have been cruel to them in many respects. And I think Meghan's more in touch with the feelings than any of the British people. She's American, she's liberal, and he's been looking for someone like that since his mum died, and he's never going to let.
But Michelle, with the media, why did they start getting so political? Wasn't that a mistake?
Yes, yeah, definitely.
Because prior to the middle of last summer, the media had given them a great run, really. And as soon as they started getting political, as soon as they started talking about climate change, then getting private jets, they were in trouble from that moment on, weren't they?
Yeah, and I do think that they probably haven't listened to the likes of William or their advisors, and they've sort of ploughed in with political points like that and not thought it through properly. But I think they've kind of isolated themselves from their advisors, because I think the plan was, we'll give it a year. If it doesn't happen, our happiness comes foremost. And, since Archie's been born, that's more prominent.
And Michelle, a final quick thought from you. And you've expressed sympathy, for him, for them. What about the Queen? Do you feel a bit sorry for her in all this?
Definitely. Yeah, 100%. I mean, she's been brought up in a generation from the word go where she's had to be strong. I mean, I don't know if you've watched The Crown, but,
I have, yes. Do you know, actually, Michelle, partly because I was being laid up a little bit over the holidays, I've watched all 3 series. I've loved every minute of it.
I think if Charles had had this choice when he was probably in his 20s, he may have gone down a different route. He was obviously unhappy when he was, going through his youth. I think the Queen, I'm a big admirer of the Queen and what she's done, and she's stuck by her beliefs. She she's done all that, but I think we're in a different era. And
Okay.
I think we've just got to suck it
All
up
right.
and go.
Michelle, thank you. Don't leave it another 25 years before you pick up the phone and call us again. Thank you very much indeed. And yeah, isn't it amazing, the Queen? And I really literally have watched all 3 series off the ground. I know it's not all true, but goodness me, it's well done and brilliantly acted. And the historical timelines remind me how old I'm getting. But I mean, since 1952, she's been our Queen. It is really, truly, absolutely remarkable. This is the Sunday edition of the Nigel Farage Show here at LBC. It's 18 minutes past 11.
This is LBC.
Calling all hard-working minicab drivers. Are you the very best London has to offer? Yes? Then Greyhound Cars, one of South London's oldest and most progressive minicab companies, want to speak to you. Spend less time travelling to jobs and more time earning money. With a very busy day circuit, we have high demand and are now offering great bonuses and mileage rates for the very best drivers. You could pay as low as 10% commission. Start today at greyhoundcars.co.uk.
Why let the thought of your tax return peck away at you?
Tax.
Make them stop. Don't keep ducking it. Do your tax return by the 31st of January at gov.uk/self-assessment. And don't forget to pay what you owe.
Tax.
Global Player,
Radio, playlists and podcasts.
where it's all together and all for free.
Download it from your App Store now.
The Dreams up to 50% off winter sale is now on. And until Tuesday, there's further reductions on a choice of beds and mattresses. And there's even free delivery. Don't miss out. Further reductions end Tuesday at Dreams. T's and C's and minimum spend applies.
Here's the thing about block management. If you do it yourself,
You're over here, sorting out the insurance. And here, keeping everything compliant. Don't forget the grounds maintenance and the service charges.
and that's just what you need to do today. But because the ABC Estates block management team can look after every aspect of your property portfolio, from repairs to service charge collections, your time can, at last, be better spent elsewhere. Be as happy as Larry with block management from Aldermartin, Baines and Cuthbert. Talk to us today. Call 0800 888 6688 or visit abcestates.co.uk.
Football's crazy, but not as crazy as your hunch. What's your hunch? It's me, the voice inside your head, that tells you what's going to happen in this weekend's games. The one that tells you it's going to be 9-0, 12 corners, 2 yellows, 3 reds, and one rogue streaker? Okay, bit niche, but you get the picture. No matter how complex your hunch is, Betway's Bet Your Way Builder lets you combine markets like goal scorers, corners, cards, and match winner into one bet on one match, and you get odds instantly. Heed your hunch with Betway's Bet Your Way Builder.
Full terms apply. 18 plus. BeGambleAware.org.
Leading Britain's conversation. The Nigel Farage Show. Tweet at LBC using the hashtag #FarageOnLBC.
Some strong opinions out there. Tony says Harry and Meghan have become deeply unpopular and it's all their own fault. Nigel, if they move to Canada, but the British public are still picking up the bill, I will become a Republican and want to get rid of the lot of them. Just something else for the media to trash. I long ago lost respect for journalists, says Mike in Eltham. Mike, actually, the truth of it is that the journalists gave them a fairy tale wedding, a wholly uncritical start. It wasn't until they started talking about current affairs and politics that the media began to turn against them. And bear in mind, Mike, they just had 6 weeks out on Vancouver Island with no paparazzi, no intrusion whatsoever. Let's go to Theodore, who's a first-time caller to this show from Edmonton. Good morning, Theodore.
Good morning, Nigel. How are you?
I am well, but I do, on a personal level, I know Harry's not had the easiest time of it, but I do think to have done this and not to have told the Queen first, I think it's awful, Theodore.
I see what is going on there. That's the reason why I'm calling, Nigel.
Yeah.
I've had the discussions going on this morning about stripping Harry, his title, HRH.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't think that makes sense at all. He was born with it.
Yes.
He was not married into a royal family. So, to me, it's just like saying he's no longer the son of Charles. So, that doesn't make sense to me at all.
Well, Theodore, I don't think that he is going to be stripped of it, but I do think there's a possibility that he might just jack it in and decide to go and live on the West Coast and become a relatively ordinary citizen?
Well, I think people change their mind. Opinion changes. I think I remember this guy when his mother was married and things like that. It's a young chap. People don't understand that we have different tolerance levels, and they're too young to handle what is going on. That is my opinion. I understand people said something about Charles and things said about Charles and Camilla and all that. Those people were mature people. They could handle things differently. But these are young people.
Well, he's not that young, Theodore, is he? I mean, he's mid-30s, you know.
I know. I do remember that. Like I said to you, I was in this country when Diana was married. I was in this country when both of them were born. So I know they're young people, you know, and unable to handle these things. And they could make mistakes, but then they shouldn't be handed too much for it, to be quite frank with you.
Well,
and
it's
again,
tough.
people are making too much capital about them receiving money. Look, my view is this. It doesn't matter whatever. If they stop giving them money, taxes are not going to come down here. Everybody still has to pay taxes. So why worry about all this?
Because it's what people think is right and wrong. And I think, Theodore, what angers people is the thought they're going to have their cake and eat it. I think that's what angers people. Theodore, let me ask you, are you a royalist?
I am. I believe in royals, yes.
You do. And
I love the Queen. Yes, I do.
And, of course, the Queen herself, of course, not just Queen of this country. She's head of state in I think, a total of 14 countries. And, of course, at the head of the Commonwealth, which could be a quite remarkable organisation one day.
That is true, to be quite frank with you. And then for the suggestions to get rid of that, replace it with what? Replace it with something that would represent just Britain and not the Commonwealth? Or with what? I don't know.
No, I think the Commonwealth link is very, very important indeed. Theodore, thank you for your call. Off to Susan in Tolworth, the first-time caller of the show. Susan, good morning.
Good morning, Nigel. I think Harry's a lovely person, and all these people that are giving their comments, they're entitled to it. But if they've ever had awkward situations in a family, they should know better. A lot of people fall out with families all over this country, and they got a cheek to pick on him and to call their baby a monkey. And I love monkeys.
Hang on, Susan, I saw one tweet that was put out that was inappropriate and wrong. The person was sacked. And Susan, I honestly, and I really mean this, I've seen what the New York Times have been saying. I've seen what CNN have been saying. I've watched one or two newspaper reviewers on the left in this country saying this could be racism. It's got nothing to do with it, Susan.
Well, to me, it has. They've picked on her since she's been in this country.
They have not, Susan.
Kate,
no, Susan.
Innocent one.
No, Susan.
I don't agree. She actually, Kate, married into the family. She never did a job. She's doing a very good job now, I have to say that. But she was more an independent person, and she worked hard. All they've ever done is picked on her family and how they don't get on. It's nobody's business.
Susan, okay, there were difficulties with her father, right? But it was her father that put that letter out into the public domain. It was her father that did that. They had a fallout, all right. But Susan, the press, I mean, honestly, those first couple of public engagements that were done by Meghan and Harry, I've never seen better publicity.
Well, I don't like the press here, and I can understand why he wants to get away. The fact that his mother was murdered, which there's no doubt about it.
But, Susan, it was an accident.
No, I don't believe that. I've seen it on the telly, a few programmes about it.
Well,
and the point that his mother was picked so badly on, and the media...
Susan, the media give everybody in public life a rough time and occasionally a good time. Susan, I'm going to move on because I want to get one more call in before the break. I'm going to go to Jane, a first-time caller to the show, to the station from Hertfordshire. Jane, good morning.
Good morning.
So,
Nigel.
do you take the view that Harry's entitled to do all of this, or does he have to make a decision tomorrow, one thing or the other?
Harry's perfectly entitled to do what he wants to do, but what I would really say to him is to think about the consequences and the hurt that he's causing, not just to his grandmother, but his brother, his father, and all the family around him, and what might happen from that. My son was married a woman who then decided that I wasn't the same as them, not through class or anything like that, but just the way I choose to live my life. And the hurt that it's caused, not just for myself personally, but for the rest of his relatives, is immense. And if anything ever happens, he would sort of cut his bridges because of the hurt.
Well, I'm afraid
I am emotional about it.
No, of course you are. And look, you've been through this, you're going through this, but of course you're doing it in relative privacy, Jane. And I guess, for Harry, this is played out in the full glare of publicity, and it's difficult. But Jane, he was born into this.
He was born to duty.
Yes, that's what I think.
His mum, who I did have an occasion to meet once, I think his mum would be so upset knowing that they've done everything for him and they've tried their best to allow him to go off and do things and be successful in a lot of cases. For example, the Invictus Games, supporting him in that. And then he's turning his back. But I would just say to him, I know you don't want it to happen, but if it all goes wrong, where are you going to go back to?
Right, and a final point, Jane, on this subject. You got the last word on this. Are you hopeful that there could be a sort of good agreement at Sandringham tomorrow?
I'm hopeful that the Queen stays strong because, in my experience, if you give too much, then what happens is they just keep taking until it gets to the point where you have to say no, and then that's when the bad feelings and the horrible emotional hurt really hurts.
Jane, thank you for your call. Thank you for sharing your own difficult family story. It'll be a heck of a day tomorrow. In a moment, we're going to talk about the crisis in Iran. But for now, we're going to go to the news. It's 11:30. Philip Chrysakos.
Donald Trump is praising people in Iran's capital, Tehran, for protesting against the downing of a passenger plane. Iran has admitted it shot down the Ukraine Airlines jet last Wednesday, but says it was a mistake. The UK's ambassador to Iran, Rob McRae, is expressing his gratitude following his arrest in Tehran, adding he wasn't at a demonstration but at a vigil for the victims. Prince Harry and Meghan's future as royals and their funding will be decided in crisis talks chaired by the Queen tomorrow. Her Majesty will meet with Princes Charles and William along with the Duke of Sussex. The Prime Minister is in Oman to offer his condolences following the death of the Sultan Qubas bin Said. Boris Johnson will attend a ceremony in Muscat alongside the Prince of Wales, the Defence Secretary and the Chief of the Defence Staff. LBC weather, sunny spells mixed with showers across the northwestern parts of Scotland and central England until early afternoon. Windy in the far north, a high of 10 degrees.
This is LBC.
During the Flight Centre January sale, we've got loads of free upgrade offers, like upgrading your holiday flights to Virgin Economy Delight or Delta Comfort Plus. Upgrading your trip with 7 days free car hire for holidays to the US, Australia and South Africa. Or upgrading your stay, like half board to all-inclusive free of charge. So it's all tucking in, no forking out. Chat to us today and we'll tailor-make it easy to plan a holiday that's all travel, no worries. On select packages subject to availability at all protected terms apply.
I never belong. I gotta be me. I gotta be me.
This new year, get the whole family singing with an extra £500 off list price across the Skoda range between the 16th and 30th of January. Also available when purchasing with our finance offers. Search Skoda New Year New Car for more details. Driven by something different. Skoda. Exclude Citigo EIV and all SE technology variants. Order by the 30th of January and register by the 31st of March 2020. Offer not available with contract hire. UK retail customers 18+. Finance subject to status. Terms and conditions apply. Visit skoda.co.uk.
Sharing a Lebanese dining experience is always an extraordinary occasion at Crocker's Folly. Your intimate meal, celebration or corporate event will create amazing memories for up to 200 people. If you're hungry for a unique dining experience that's the talk of the town, there's a table waiting for you at Crocker's Folly, a member of the legendary Marouche Restaurant Family Group on Aberdeen Place, St John's Wood. Book now at marouche.com.
Why let the thought of your tax return peck away at you?
Tax.
Make them stop. Don't keep ducking it. Do your tax return by the 31st of January at gov.uk/self-assessment. And don't forget to pay what you owe.
Tax.
The Dreams up to 50% off winter sale is now on. And until Tuesday, there's further reductions on a choice of beds and mattresses. And there's even free delivery. Don't miss out. Further reductions end Tuesday at Dreams. T's and C's and minimum spend applies.
We live in an age where you can stream any box set instantly. But staying on top of our pensions is anything but instant. Pension Bee can transfer most old pensions together into one simple online plan. So you can manage your pension on your smartphone as simply as streaming that box set. Download the app or visit pensionbee.com today.
Authorised and regulated by the Financial Conduct Authority. Capital at risk.
The Nigel Farage Show on LBC.
Well, the Iran story is most certainly not going away, particularly with the detention yesterday for a period of time of the British ambassador to Iran. Tweets also from Donald Trump. And just sort of get a bit of an update on Iran, I'm going to speak now to Adil Darwish, political editor of the Middle East magazine. Good morning to you.
Good morning, Nigel.
So from what I can make out, the British ambassador to Iran was... Rob McCare was attending a vigil for those that had died in that tragic shooting down of the aeroplane, and then it sort of turned into an anti-government protest. Is that roughly right?
That's absolutely correct what happened, and it was quite right that the ambassador attended there for two reasons. One, there were 4 British nationals on that aircraft, so it was quite right. He represents the nation there. Secondly, his job, or any diplomat job, is to observe these things and report on it neutrally back to the Foreign Office.
Right, and then it turned into another one of these anti-government protests, and is that why he was arrested, because he was seen to be at a protest?
That's what they say, but as far as I understand, when I spoke to my sources in the government, as soon as it turned and he heard the anti-government slogans, he went straight away into the nearest place outside the street, which was a barber shop, in order not to be seen among protests, so not to be used as an excuse, because the Vienna Convention, 1949, update 1961, of the diplomatic missions required them to be neutral. So he immediately left the scene.
Right.
So he was arrested actually in the barber shop.
Okay. And talking of protests, of course, there were some quite big anti-government protests the other week, which we understand were pretty brutally put down. And into this, Donald Trump tweets overnight to the brave, long-suffering people of Iran, "I've stood with you since the beginning of my presidency, and my administration will continue to stand with you. We are following your protests closely. We are inspired by your courage." We don't get, Adil Darwish, we don't get much coverage in this country about, Hong Kong protests we hear about all the time. We don't hear that much about protests in Iran. Can you give us any idea what scale these protests have been on over the course of the last month or two?
They have been actually throughout the whole summer. They've been going on for over 7 months now.
Yep.
It's actually, as a journalist myself for over 50 years, I'm puzzled why our big media, Sky, BBC, ITN, are not actually giving it the time.
So am I.
It's exactly like the Yellow Vests in France. They've been going almost for 18 months now. It's almost like a civil war and totally ignored by our media. So on one hand, perhaps there is this groupthink that we should appease the moderates in Iran, not intimidate the hardliners. Although personally, having actually written 5 books on the region and having covered Iran, was a correspondent in Iran 1970s and 80s, that actually doesn't quite reflect the reality. There is no such thing as moderates and hardliners within the Islamic Republic, because the foundation myth of the Islamic Republic is to be very anti-America, anti-Britain, anti-Israel. They still live on that Mossadegh coup story from 1953. So anyone appear there to be moderate undermines the foundation philosophy of the regime. So I don't know why our establishment not getting it into their heads.
No, well, I struggle with it too, Adil Derwish. Thank you very much indeed for that. Political editor of the Middle East magazine. And, you know, Dominic Raab is saying that after the way that our ambassador was treated, as they arrested for a period of time, then released, Raab is saying that, that Iran risks becoming, a pariah state for what it's done. And yet we had Boris Johnson in the House of Commons last week saying that ideally we would go back to the Iran nuclear deal, something I, of course, have been very deeply critical of. I believe that it is appeasement. Trump broke the deal. Iran themselves have now broken the deal. And yet we really, really, really do not get a proper debate about the scale of protests in Iran and about the fact, and we don't know 100% this is true, but we believe that up to 1,500 people who have been protesting against the regime have been killed in the course of doing so. And yet we just don't seem to want to have that conversation. I find it very, very strange indeed. One other little story that I thought I'd touch on this morning. It is reported in the Mail on Sunday under the headline, Grandad's Army. Desperate defence chiefs are urging ex-soldiers as old as 57 to re-enlist to plug manpower shortages. Now, I don't know quite how true this is. 57, oh gosh, I'm nearly that. I'm not a granddad yet, though. I do wonder, clearly, if there are recruiting problems in the army or in the reserves, perhaps what we ought to say to ourselves is that if we stopped advertising for snowflakes to join the army and maybe got back to slogans like "Be the Best," we might not have quite so much of a problem. Now, the continued demand for us to, and I would have been happy to talk about Iran, but no, there's continued demand to talk about the royal crisis, to talk about whether it's going to get worse or better, to talk about the Sandringham summit tomorrow. So I'm going to go back to you on that. And yep, come on. If you try to get through and you haven't, try now, 0345 6060 973. I'm going to go to Peter in Wallingford. Peter, good morning.
Morning, Nigel. Great show, as always. What I want to know is what would happen if Meghan and Harry get divorced. Let's face it, many royal marriages have struggled. But, what happens financially? Where does Harry live? What happens to the finances coming through SussexRoyal.com? What actually happens? I'd love to hear from anyone who has any views on that.
Well, no one's got a clue, really. But one of the storylines this morning, and back to where I just was, the Mail on Sunday, one of the Mail on Sunday stories is that what Harry will be told tomorrow is that he'll be double taxed. He'll be taxed on his earnings in North America and taxed on that income in the United Kingdom. But I'm not sure that's going to scare him too much, because if they really have decided, that SussexRoyal.com and the Oprah Winfrey Show are the way forward, I think they're going to earn an awful lot of money in doing that. In terms of, I guess the biggest risk for Harry, Peter, on a personal level would be that things end in acrimony. He jacks in the title HRH. He goes off to live on the West Coast. Sometime down the road they get divorced and he's almost got no way back. That's the biggest risk for him, Peter, isn't it?
Yes, I think historically celebrity and royal family just don't mix. I think celebrity is all about me. Royals is all about duty and the country. And I think just fundamentally, as we've seen many times over the years, they just don't work out. And poor Harry, he's ended up in the situation he is. I think he has to take a lot of responsibility for it. Ultimately, though, there is a reasonable chance this will all end in tears. And what does happen to him if they do separate? If he's been living in Vancouver Island for a few years, does he come back? What would actually happen?
I don't know. Because, the previous royal exile, of course, was Edward VIII, who, of course, abdicated and then became the Duke of Windsor. And he went off to live with Wallis Simpson, didn't he? And they finished up in the end in the Bois de Boulogne in Paris. During the war, he was sort of Governor General of the Bahamas. Is there one possible way out of this? Could it be that Harry becomes the Governor General of Canada? Could that solve some of this?
I think when you lose trust, it's very, very difficult to get it back. And I think the royal family, Britain, one of the things, I sell internationally, and one thing that everyone says positively about Britain is that we're trustworthy. Our word is our bond. We are far more based upon pride and keeping to your word than most other countries. And when you lose trust, it's so tough to get it back.
Yeah.
And I think Harry would have to work very hard.
Yeah, I do
to
too.
Get that back.
And I don't think he'll want to become Governor General, because that would preclude him from making his own money. Well, Peter, in line with much of what you're saying, I get this message in from Andrew on Facebook. He says, I think Prince Harry has let the side down for not doing his duty. It sounds harsh, but it's kind of where I am too. Do you feel that's right? He's let the side down?
Yeah. Absolutely. I suspect he has been misled, manipulated, whatever the right word is. On the other hand, he is a 30-year-old guy with many, many privileges. He's had a blessed life so far. And, there are many people in this country who are in a far worse position.
Oh.
They've had a baby.
Yeah.
They've had some bad luck.
Yeah,
and I think for them to say, poor us, look at us, what a tough life we've had, it's just irresponsible and disgusting for so many other people who work bloody hard and can't even dream of having
and have been through
that they've had already,
and themselves have been through personal tragedies, but just not perhaps but perhaps not played out in front of the world the way this has been. Peter, thank you very much indeed for your call. Well, get ready, Storm Brendan is on its way. I'm going to talk to legendary weatherman John Ketley about that in a moment. For now, you're listening to the Sunday edition of the Nigel Farage Show here on LBC, and it's 11:45.
Coming up at 12, Majid Noir's leading Britain's conversation. Next on LBC.
Choose Swale Heating and you get a lot more than an efficient boiler from top manufacturers like Quista Bosch. There are warranties of up to 10 years, experts to install your boiler, a 24/7 call centre and specialist advice on smart heating technology. Visit swaleheating.com. Rely on us to keep you warm.
Your company's doing pretty well. Your tax position's okay. So what's keeping you awake at night?
To face the future with confidence, talk to Vision Consulting. We've expanded from Gants Hill to the Gherkin, with clients from the fishmonger to the multi-million-pound property investment company. And our growth as a firm of chartered accountants and registered auditors is based on our passion for our clients' business.
Have confidence in your accountant. See visionconsulting.co.uk.
Global Player.
Radio, playlists and podcasts.
Where it's all together and all for free.
Download it from your App Store now.
How can it be fair that millions of people in the world are denied access to clean water? At WaterAid, we need your help to create an equal world. Whether you're from Morden or Madagascar, everyone, everywhere should have access to clean water. Because clean water changes lives. You can help WaterAid change the picture. To find out how, search WaterAid Radio now.
A credit limit of up to £1,500. What do you have to do to get it? Simple. Get online and check if you're eligible for an Ocean credit card in minutes without affecting your credit score. For your Ocean credit card, visit ocean.co.uk now and get all that from Ocean. Intelligent Lending Limited is a credit broker. Capital One, the exclusive lender. Representative 39.9% APR variable. Borrow and spend responsibly.
Sunny speaking.
Hi, Sonny. It's Alex. Is Steve free?
Steve, I have Alex on the line.
Put him through. Hi, Alex. Hello? Hello?
Fed up of a difficult-to-use phone system? Hi is an intuitive touchscreen business phone with removable tablet, centralised contacts and instant video to anyone. Stop saying
hello
and start saying
hi.
Visit hihi.co.uk for more information.
The Nigel Farage Show on LBC.
Let's have a break and talk about the weather, shall we? We'll get away from the royal story for a moment. Now, I remember it was about the third weekend of September, Sunday afternoon. I thought, shall I cut the grass? There was no point. It was so dry, it hadn't grown for ages. And then the heavens opened, and it seemed to me that it's barely stopped raining ever since. That ahead of Storm Brendan sweeping its way in. John Ketley is joining me this morning. John, am I right to think that was an exceptionally wet autumn?
Yes, I think you're absolutely right, Nigel. No doubt about that. In fact, I've been totting up the figures, and I reckon that the year 2000, the whole of the year, 2019.
Keep up.
I'll try and keep up. 2019, I reckon for England and Wales, it was the sixth wettest in about 250 years.
Wow.
In figures going back, 1766, I think I've got figures for England and Wales. So I think it was the sixth wettest in all that period of 2019. As you say, it wasn't too bad for the first half of the year, and we had that lovely heat wave, didn't we, in July and end of June as well. Coinciding with the Wimbledon once again for some of the period anyway. But no, it has been very, very wet since then. It's been an atrocious second half of the year, I have to say, and very comparable with how it was, as well, I was going to say now, with year 2000, which was extremely wet that year at the end of the
and we saw horrible flooding in Lincolnshire, Yorkshire, and people suffering. I was told that I was in Hampshire last week. I was told that the aquifers are full, so they're not worried about the chalk streams for next year at all.
No.
Which is good. Now, we've not had many, from what I can see, major weather events, but I think there's one on the way, isn't there?
Well, weather events and how many we get these days, it's always good for making television programmes, isn't it? Every year they seem to make a television programme and say it's never been as bad as this before, but of course it has. We all live through them, but then we tend to forget most of them. But there is a big event coming. We've got Storm Brendan, which is now showing its teeth. It's about 1,000 miles east of Nova Scotia at the moment, so it's a long way away from us, but we are seeing the teeth of that storm tomorrow morning. So the start of the week is going to be particularly stormy as Brendan develops and deepens significant deepening of this thing. It's a low pressure system which will finish up between northwest Scotland and Iceland with a deep low centre of about 940 millibars. That really is quite intense, and that's going to be during the mid to late part of Monday. So that means to say that we are going to see gales sweeping in across the country during Monday, and the severest storms will be in the west and the north. So certainly around the Irish Sea coast up into Scotland we could see gusts of 80 miles an hour, but that's a typical winter storm.
Yeah, it is.
In our age, a winter storm. And the interesting thing about this is that the following day we're going to see an embryonic storm developing across the south of Britain. So that'll be coming across England and Wales. That'll affect more of the London area, more of England really, for Tuesday. So the winds then will be stronger on Tuesday in the southeastern corner of Britain than they will be from this one, Brendan, in the west and the north.
Okay, no, well, so it's a big storm. It's not particularly out of the ordinary. What is out of the ordinary are the pretty shocking scenes that seem to be going on week after week in Australia. Horrible. 28 now died directly as a result of these fires. What are the prospects for the Australian bushfires looking ahead for the next few days?
Listening to the Prime Minister, and I think some people haven't really listened to him that much, but for different reasons. But the Prime Minister says it could go on for weeks and if not months. But, looking at the weather, which is more my line of attack, the temperature, for example, in Sydney is only going to be about 23 degrees next couple of days as a top temperature, which is quite low because the winds are going to be coming in off the sea. And looking ahead for the next 14 days, top temperature about 29, 31 degrees in Sydney, and there will be some thunderstorms developing Thursday to Sunday this week, so that'll help, won't it? But of course the winds are going to be fanning those flames where the storms are, where the bushfires are just inland, and there'll still be problems, there's no question about that. Although there'll be a lull and there's some genuine rain to come with thunderstorms, there will be difficult problems, I think, ahead as the Prime Minister says, for the next few weeks.
I was in Sydney in August, John, and it was cold and it was windy, really cold, and for the first time ever a full league game of Aussie rules football was stopped because there was snow on the pitch. So there you are.
Really?
Yes, it was.
Was it forecast? That's the question.
No, they need a John Ketley down under.
They do
clearly.
indeed. Well, I am available.
John, thanks ever so much.
Pleasure.
So, as I say, the news story is telling you this huge weather event coming, Storm Brendan, and sure, if you are on the West Coast or in Scotland, this could be pretty severe, but it is, I think we tend to get these news stories and people get I was getting texts about it, it would be impossible to travel on Monday and Tuesday this week. No, in most places it'll be fine. Back to the royal crisis. Is it going to get worse before it gets better? I genuinely fear the downside on this one. Sue is a first-time caller to LBC and lives in Epsom. Good morning.
Hi, Nigel. Hope you're well.
I am well.
Excellent. My point really was from Meghan's perspective, I just think it's a missed opportunity. The reason I say it's a missed opportunity is she was the first time anybody has ever, of an ethnic minority, been afforded to join the royal family. She could have made huge amount of difference, which is what we all thought she was going to do. We welcomed her. We all thought that being an ethnic minority person, she could use that influence to make things better. And I think, especially also because she was interested in education for young girls. They're both very interested in Africa. With the Commonwealth link, they could have done it.
Well, wasn't that potential, absolutely massive when she first appeared on the scene?
Absolutely. And also, I think everybody brings it back down to the racism and all that sort of thing.
Nonsense.
Which I appreciate.
Nonsense.
Yes, there may be an element of it. However,
don't
I'm from an ethnic minority background. And also, all these rifts in the family. She hasn't been within the family for long. You have to sometimes ride these things out. We all go through these things. You ride it out. You get on with it, and things do improve. I don't personally think they've both given the institution, the UK public, anybody. I don't think they've given us enough chance to do that. I mean, how are they going to continue doing all these aspirational good works half-heartedly?
Well,
50% in, 50% out.
So you cannot do lots of good deeds and good works and be patron of loads of charities and attend all of their events and help them raise money and do all of those vital things, and at the same time spend most of your time on the West Coast of America seeking to become financially independent. And that is at the heart of this problem. Sue, thank you. Having their cake and eating it. Ben is calling from Bristol. Good morning.
Good morning, Nigel.
New caller. Welcome to LBC. So,
thank you so much.
Not at all. So, which side of is Harry letting the side down a bit here, Ben?
I think he might be a little bit, to be honest with you, but not in the way that has been discussed a lot this morning. I think that the way he's done it has been bad. I think that the way he has announced this on Instagram, without consulting the royal family, is not the proper way to have done it. I don't disagree with what they've done necessarily in the sense that they want to separate from the royal family, and that Harry is no longer the spare. His brother has 3 children who are in line to the throne before he is. I don't see any problem with them living a more civilian lifestyle, I suppose. But on the flip side, to have not followed the protocol that has been in place for hundreds of years, or to not at least have the respect for the Queen, to have had the conversation properly with her beforehand, I think was the wrong thing to have done.
Well, perhaps they should have spent Christmas with her, Ben, as the royal family always used to do.
Potentially, if I'm honest. But then, I also think that a lot of this blame is being put on Meghan, and I think Harry is also a big, I think he's his own man, and I think we need to put this as Harry's decision as much as Meghan's decision. Hashtag has been Meg's.
I can't really see Meghan at the Sandringham Boxing Day pheasant shoot, can you?
I think she knew what she was signing up for when she joined the royal family, and I think to a certain extent there needs to be a bit of respect for that. But then I do see what you mean.
Is she splitting? Is she splitting Harry away from the royal family?
I think that she may have been the catalyst for it, but I think he was always heading that way. I mean, I never had the impression that he was all in on his royal duties or the royal family. I think that he was playing along while while he had to. But for years there have been discussions in newspapers and via royal commentators saying that he is lost and he's not sure really what he's doing, and he's just plodding along. I mean, there's always been conversations over Harry's level of happiness in his life. And, maybe this is the time, now that William is well established with 3 children who are ahead in the line of... who are
yes.
Next in line to the throne before Harry is.
But there's lots of royal work to do, Ben, and we had Phil Dampier in, royal expert earlier, making the point that many active members of the royal family, like Princess Anne, who works like crazy, is going to be 70 this year, and actually they need some people to go and do the jobs.
I absolutely agree, but then, Prince Charles, when he acceds to the throne, plans to slim down the royal family, I've been reading in recent days.
Yeah, I know, and I think the truth of it is, age is slimming the royal family down already. Prince Andrew is now pretty much out of the picture, and I would think that is likely to be forever. As I say, Princess Anne is 70, the Duke of Edinburgh is 98, the Queen's nearly 94. It's pretty slimmed down already. Ben, thank you very much. Thank you to all of you for your calls, and the big summit tomorrow. Let's hope it goes well. I don't suppose for a moment it will. You've been listening to the Nigel Farage Show. I'm back tomorrow at 6 o'clock, at 3 this afternoon. It's Ian Payne, but up next, it's Majid Nawaz.
Thank you, Nigel. Coming up, at least 100,000 people gathered Saturday in India to protest Prime Minister Modi's new law, perceived as anti-Muslim, that they say will strip the country of its secular foundations. Is Indian secularism in danger? Before that, the Queen has called emergency peace talks tomorrow at Sandringham to end the Windsor's civil war, as a journalist, Tom Bradby, who knows Harry and Meghan, has warned against the danger of Meghan giving a no-holds-barred interview in which she accuses the royal family of racism and sexism, if not placated. What would you like to see as the outcome from tomorrow's talks at Sandringham? But first, videos on social media showed crowds gathering in Iran to chant anti-government slogans and tearing up pictures of Soleimani.